From the Western Mass News Studios in Springfield, this is Western Mass News Getting Answers with Dave Mattson.
Thanks for joining me for this week's edition of Western Mass News Getting Answers. As you know, each and every week I'm joined by political and business leaders and other newsmakers to talk about the issues that impact you. This week I'm joined by Northampton Mayor Gina-Louise Sciarra. Now, she was first elected the 45th mayor of Northampton back in the fall. She was sworn in earlier this month. A former Ward 4 and at-large city councilor, she was unanimously chosen as the council president in 2020 and had worked full-time as the communications manager for the nonprofit organization Pathlight. During her 8 years in local government, she did resign from that position after winning the mayor's race against Mark Warner back in November. Now, time permitting, we'll focus on how the city is dealing with the latest COVID-19 surge, her hopes for her first term as mayor, police community relations, including the establishment of the Department of Community Care, and of course, with Northampton, we always have to talk about the city's downtown. Mayor Sciarra, thanks for joining us. It's good to see you.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here with you, Dave. Thank you.
Congratulations on your win and the fact that you've been in office now about 3 weeks, you said.
Yes, thank you. Yes, it's been a very busy first 3 weeks.
And as we were talking about before we started the program, you took office right around the time of the COVID-19 resurgence. Let's talk about how bad the Omicron variant is in Northampton. How hard has this variant hit?
Yes, well, I mean, Northampton certainly has been hit like all the other communities in the area and throughout the Commonwealth. Northampton has had a very strong COVID-19 response since the very beginning. So we have a lot of apparatus in place to help our community. And, we've just always led by with our public health experts and public safety, and we've created a strong group who make data-driven decisions. So that has really helped to minimize the impact of the pandemic as much as possible in the community, but we're feeling it like everyone else.
Sure. What's the city's current vaccination rate?
Our current vaccination rate as of last Friday is 78% fully vaccinated and 46% boosted. So we're really pleased with those numbers. We would love everyone to be vaccinated, and I encourage people to do it. Northampton has really maintained an ongoing vaccination facility since the very beginning of the time the vaccinations were available. So a little bit over a year now, we have been doing vaccinations in the city, not just for Northampton, but for all of Hampshire County. And we continue to vaccinate people and children now 4 to 6 days a week. And we've administered over 40,962 doses of vaccine in the last year. So we're really proud of the response and how we've really helped the region in addition to our own community. And, I hope that we really carry forward the lessons that we've learned during this about how we can all work together and how we can mobilize regionally and the importance of helping some of our smaller communities. And I think that that's particularly important for public health, but for other things as well.
I mean, yeah, there are a lot of positives that have come out of this. I think we tend to dwell on the negatives. And I think a lot of people also forget, too, that, you're not only dealing with the city of Northampton, you're the hub of Hampshire County. I mean, I think everybody in Hampshire County, every community looks to Northampton for that leadership.
Yes, and I think that we're proud to hold that position, but with that position comes a lot of responsibility.
Sure.
But we've done our best to help the entire our part of Western Mass and Hampshire County.
Now, I know the Board of Health was considering a COVID-19 vaccine requirement for businesses like restaurants, bars, clubs, and gyms, but decided not to take a vote. If that vote had been taken, let's talk about the decision not to take the vote and what the impact could have been had they done that.
Well, as I said, we've always tried, and our Board of Health has done remarkable work during the entire pandemic, has just worked tirelessly, and our health director has, again, worked tirelessly for Northampton, but for the region. And they've always made their decisions based on the current data and based on what our experts have said. And so, as they explained at their last meeting in great detail, that, they were looking at this requirement, but right now, with the way that Omicron works in this current surge, it just, the data didn't show that this was going to have a significant impact, because what we've now learned, right, is that Omicron can be transmitted by people who have been vaccinated and boosted, and that obviously there are breakthrough cases of it. And so it didn't seem like it was a necessary decision that needed to be made. What we do know, and I want to make, again, really stress, is that being vaccinated and being boosted has a very significant impact on the severity of illness and hospitalizations and deaths. So, while they didn't take that step to require vaccination vaccination proof for businesses, we want to just make sure that people understand the importance of being vaccinated and boosted for their own health and for the community's health.
I suppose in the whole scope of things, too, you have to try to keep things as much as you can, as normal as possible through all of this, because one of the things we're talking about is people are exhausted by this.
People are absolutely exhausted. It's true. And, it's hard to have to tell people, hold on a little bit longer. We need you to really practice all of these safe practices that we've learned over these 2 years. It's hard to tell people to adapt even to mask wearing, right? I feel like we're doing well with knowing that we need to wear masks, but now we're telling people that cloth masks really aren't sufficient and that we really need to move to a higher quality mask that filters the virus better. And so anytime we're asking people to adjust, I understand the burden that is and that people really are exhausted by it, but it's key for our health.
I look at my grandkids and all the kids in school every day who are wearing their masks from the time they get on the bus till the time they come home in the afternoon. And I always look at that and go, well, if they can do that as children, as adults, we can suck it up and wear our masks as long as we have to.
I couldn't agree more. I have a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old. And when we get in the car to take them to school, they've already put on their masks, they've adapted. I feel like children adapt better than adults in many ways, but as you said, if they can do it and they can do it all day and they can do the intense learning that they're doing in that kind of environment, then we can all do our part too.
Indeed. One of the things you addressed in your inauguration speech was equitable distribution of pandemic funds. And could you be more specific about that? And let's talk about the pandemic money that's come to Northampton.
Sure. So far the city, has received FEMA money and MEMA money and CARES Act funds. And a lot of that has been used to directly respond to the pandemic. So, PPE and protective equipment, cleaning and modifying city buildings and schools, mounting our extensive testing and vaccination operations, supporting economic recovery activities for Northampton businesses, and ensuring that our most vulnerable populations in Northampton and in the area can be vaccinated, can be tested, can have the resources that they need to stay safe from the virus. But so while it feels hard at this moment to talk about recovery, because it feels like we're back into this very difficult time, we do need to envision a recovery stage going forward, and we need to use our American Rescue Plan funds in a way that we need to use them well, and that is sustainable and that benefits everyone in Northampton. And so the city conducted a survey last fall that really asked people to tell us what the personal impact of the pandemic has been on them. And we are going to use that data to envision what kind of projects and support we can provide for the city that has the largest impact for everyone. And I'm in the process of choosing right now members of an advisory committee for these ARPA funds that Northampton's getting. Mm-hmm. And we're going to ask them to create some sort of application process and work with me to look at who can use these funds and what best way to use some part of these ARPA funds for community resources.
Sure. Now, you also talked about the establishment of a community resilience hub. Let's talk about that. What would that encompass?
Yes, our community resilience hub role will be to be a centralized and consolidated location to coordinate services and resources for some of our more vulnerable residents. But it will also serve as a climate-safe day center for folks. We've seen during the pandemic what happens when places where people could normally go during the day are shut to them. So our public libraries, our cafes, places where people can go to get out of extreme heat, extreme cold, to use the restroom. And so this will be a place where people can come and be safe, but also can connect to services and also connect to a sense of community. I really want it to be a community center for all of Northampton. So, we recognize that our houseless community is part of our community, and we're all in this together. So it will be a safe place where people can be and access services. Also different resources, so laundry, showers, computer services, job services. So that will be its main purpose. And Community Action of Pioneer Valley is our lead agency that's working on that. And so right now we're trying to locate a permanent location for the Resiliency Hub, and that's taking a little bit longer than I would like, but I'm confident that we'll get there and it will be a really central location that will serve the community best. But in the meantime, Community Action is working with MANA in Northampton to provide some of these services that the Resilience Hub will provide when it has its home.
Yeah, you talk about resilience. I mean, that's been a key word through this whole pandemic, and it really fits in with everything. It's got a pretty big umbrella.
It does, and so the concept of the Resilience Hub came out of a study that the previous mayor did a few years ago, and this was it came from direct conversations with our houseless community. This is a need that they really felt that needed to be met. And so that had already been something that we've been thinking about, but at the very beginning of the pandemic, we really just decided that this was something that we were going to put a lot of resources and time into because we saw the need, the crisis need, but additionally, it just made us think of this very concept of resilience and how we need that more than ever. And it also is going to serve as a climate resilience safe space for climate emergencies, which we're going to have more and more. So it will serve as an emergency shelter for the entire community if needed during climate emergencies.
All right, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, Mayor Sciarra and I are going to talk about police community relations. Welcome back to Western Mass News Getting Answers. My guest this week is Northampton Mayor Gina-Louise Sciarra. You have condemned what you call a disturbing increase in the use of anti-Semitic language in images in public discourse during the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's talk about what you were referring to there and how do you want to address that issue?
Yeah, so specifically, I was referring to, there was a Board of Health meeting that happened at the end of December where there were some images that were displayed by participants on the Zoom call. And during public comment, there was anti-Semitic language that was used. So one of my very first acts after taking office on January 3rd was to put out a statement condemning what had happened at that meeting. And, you know, I believe very strongly in public comment. Anyone who followed me as city council president knows that. And I believe in allowing the space for the public to engage with their local government and speak their mind to us and tell, and that's a really sort of sacred space. And, you know, when we create that free speech space, we recognize that it's protected by the First Amendment. Right. But that doesn't mean that we accept without challenge or condemnation when we hear and see things that are derogatory or meant to be damaging or you know, even harmful to a person or a group.
Being respectful. Yeah, more than anything else. Yeah.
I hope that people are always respectful in public discourse. You know, I feel like you don't get very far and you don't have communication unless you're respectful, but it goes beyond that, right? I mean, we're talking about actual hate speech. And so even if that is protected in some way, it is not something that shouldn't go unanswered or without stating that it has no place in Northampton and it's not welcome in Northampton.
Sure. Communities nationwide are scrutinizing police operations, some including Northampton's own Policing Review Commission, call for change. One of the areas now in the spotlight, though, is how the department conducts internal investigations. What's your assessment on how that's handled in the city right now?
Well, there was a local media request for those records after a state law change. And, you know, I'm extremely proud that Northampton was the only police department that had those records requested that complied, was transparent, and gave over those records. That's a level of transparency that actually our police department, Northampton Police Department, is really known for, and I'm proud of. We were the first department in the Commonwealth to be part of the Police Open Data Initiative, which was an Obama initiative in 2016. So that, you know, I'm very proud of how we handled that and how we handle our records in general. But, you know, the Northampton Policing Review Commission did highlight internal investigations as something that they thought should be looked at more carefully. And I certainly will we'll do that.
Now, one of the first things the Police Review Commission did was establish the Department of Community Care to take over mental health, substance abuse, and similar cases from police. What's the progress this new department is making on that front?
Yeah, so the Northampton Policing Review Commission, which was a commission that was established by former Mayor David Narkowitz and myself as the council president at the time, and then we appointed the members to it. They worked very hard for months and produced a report, and their main recommendation in the report is that a Department of Community Care be established for these kinds of crisis calls that don't necessarily need an armed response, or for which sometimes an armed response can exacerbate the situation. So, you know, and they stated very clearly that they thought it was important that it be a city department as opposed to a contracted service. Mm-hmm. So Northampton has hired Sean Donovan, and he's working. He started mid-December, a couple weeks before I started, and he's been working very hard. And he and I together have been working hard with other city departments and to get this, you know, figure out what we need to get operations started for this department. So, you know, we're working hard on figuring out all the steps that we need, because the most important thing is that when we start these operations, that they are safe and that they really meet the need.
It's a work in progress.
It is definitely a work in progress, yes.
It's because it's one of those things, I think it's one of the first in the area. So I'm sure a lot of people are looking at Northampton too, okay, how are they going to work with this and how they're going to deal with this? So
yeah, I mean, it's safe to say that setting up a new public safety system is a lot of work.
Sure.
And, you know, Northampton has some experience with setting up a new sort of system. We established an EMS system, you know, a few years ago. So we have some experience in it, but we're really taking the time to get it right and make sure that we create the appropriate response and that it's safe for all.
Now, this announcement came out before you took office, but one of the issues you'll soon face is the closing of the Coca-Cola bottling plant in 2023, and a loss of 320 jobs. Not really something you want to hear about, but it's part of the times, I guess.
Yes, it was certainly not welcome news during my campaign to know that this was something that was coming down, and it's a huge loss for Northampton. Of course, I worry greatly most about you know, those 320 some odd workers who are going to be losing their jobs. And, you know, it's really too bad that we, and again, those workers are victims of, you know, a large corporate restructuring. I feel like Northampton's tried to be a really good home and partner to Coca-Cola for a very long time. And so
Sure.
It's deeply disappointing that they've made this decision. But I will, you know, it's their building and it's their property, and they, I assume, are going to try and sell it. But I hope that they will be willing to partner with Northampton as much as possible to try and make sure that we get someone into that space that that will be, you know, a longtime partner with Northampton and not leave anytime soon. But that really fits in with our community, and I want, you know, prospective buyers to know what a special community Northampton is.
And I think a lot of people, if you know, from my time in Northampton, the Griggs family owned that bottling plant for years and were such a core in the city of Northampton. So they've always been a viable part of Northampton too. So let's hope that that can continue.
I certainly hope so, yeah.
All right, we're going to take another break. Time is flying by. When we come back, we're going to talk about one of my favorite places, Northampton's downtown. Welcome back to Western Mass News Getting Answers. I'm pleased to be joined again this week by Northampton Mayor Gina-Louise Sciarra. Let's talk about Northampton's downtown, always vibrant. What's your assessment of downtown now? Because I know there are a lot of vacant storefronts, and like many communities, small businesses have been challenged during this pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the pandemic has been devastating for small businesses. And so, you know, in Northampton, we're trying our best to support our businesses. There, you know, stores have come and gone, but you know, there certainly are new businesses that are starting out in Northampton, and I'm really grateful for their investment in Northampton. So, you know, we have some long-time vacant storefronts that I very much would like to see filled, but that's a sort of a perennial problem, unfortunately. But I do think that Northampton is still vibrant, and we're doing all that we can right now to support our businesses. I urge everyone to please support our restaurants. You know, go get takeout if you don't feel comfortable dining. Do everything you can to support all of our businesses right now. It's a really tough time to be in business. The city is currently right now providing testing for businesses, and also providing KN95 masks to kind of help any way that we can during this particularly tough moment in the pandemic.
You know, and I think we were talking about this during the break, that if my time there goes back over 50 years, you know, to the early 70s when McCallum's, the department store, closed and a lot of other storefronts closed. Northampton's been through a lot of different variations through the years, but has always come back stronger.
And Northampton will certainly come back stronger after this pandemic, and the city is very willing and eager to partner with the downtown in every way to make sure that we ease that transition and help, you know, just recover from this really tough time. But yes, as you know, that's really, I think, an indication of a strong city and community is that you do have these different times that you go through, and you come back and you evolve with the time, and Northampton's certainly going to do that. Now,
you referred to this when we talked about the Resilience Hub, but about a daytime shelter for the homeless. Do you think that would help ease the problem of panhandlers downtown during the day? Because I know that's a complaint you hear about all the time.
It is, and you know, there's currently a shelter at First Churches. This is their second year that they have provided sort of emergency shelter, and there's also a shelter at Grove Street. Manna, which I mentioned earlier, operates a community center where people can receive meals and do laundry and meet some of those needs that the Resilience Hub is going to eventually. So, you know, but the Resilience Hub, as I said, will be much more than just a daytime shelter, right? It will be a real community center where people can find community, but also find resources and make connections and hopefully, you know, deal with some of the things that they're struggling with.
Northampton is in the bottom 10% of communities in Massachusetts when it comes to internet connectivity and no fiber optic network. I mean, they're not alone, obviously. Is that one of the issues you want to address?
Absolutely. You know, it's true that our current provider, which has a monopoly on our service, hasn't kept up with the technology and hasn't, you know, there's some fiber on our poles, but they haven't taken the step to connect our residences and businesses with it. So this is an issue that's very important in Northampton. Back in November at the election, we voted to create a municipal light plant. 91% of Northampton voted in favor of creating a municipal light plant, which is the next step that we need to take to create a public utility. And the public utility that we're looking at is municipal broadband. So this is something that's very important to me and clearly important to the community. We are in this phase of looking at a feasibility study and trying to figure out how we can go about bringing that to Northampton. And I think it's an incredibly important equity issue. We've seen during the pandemic, you know, it's certainly been proven that having reliable internet service is a critical utility for everybody. This is not a luxury. This is something that everyone needs. It's how we've done it's how kids have gone to school. It's how we've done healthcare. There's so many things that we need this for. And so it's important that everyone in Northampton has equal access to that, but it's also really critical for our businesses. It's critical for our current businesses to stay current and have, you know, be able to compete. But it's very important, I think, also for economic development and for attracting business to Northampton.
We realize, I mean, it's part of our everyday life, and you know, you know, if you think back to the old modem days and go, well, it's not like that, but it could be faster.
It could be faster, and it needs to be reliable, right? And that, you know, we've seen throughout the city, not everyone has equally reliable access, and so if you're a student who's in a place where you lose that connection, you're not getting an equal education.
Exactly. We are out of time. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be with us this week. We'll have to have you back, and we'll just keep folks in Northampton and Hampshire County up to date on what's going on.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure.
It's good to see you. And my thanks again to Northampton Mayor Gina-Louise Sciarra for joining me this week. I'm Dave Mattson. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, stay well, and if you can, join us next week.